The forest was silent that evening, until a little girl's scream shattered the stillness. 8-year-old Lily had wandered off the trail with her loyal German Shepherd, Ranger, chasing what she thought was a lost boot print. But what she found instead froze her blood. A police officer, unconscious, beaten, and tied to a wooden post, was surrounded by a growing ring of fire. Flames snapped dangerously close to his uniform. He wasn't just trapped. He was minutes away from being burned alive. Ranger barked wildly, pulling Lily forward, urging her to act out. She was just a child, small, scared, and alone in the woods. But what she did next would not only save the officer's life, it would uncover a plot that threatened the entire town. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The forest trail behind Lily's house had always been her favorite place, quiet, endless, and full of the kind of mysteries an 8-year-old girl loved to imagine. Autumn leaves crunched beneath her boots as she walked, the air cool and earthy, carrying the smell of damp bark and pine. Ranger, her loyal German Shepherd, trotted proudly beside her, ears flipping with every alert sound he picked up. Lily had been coming here with him since he was a puppy, and together they knew every bend, every fallen tree, every crooked branch. But today felt different. The woods were unusually still, the breeze strangely soft, as if the forest were holding its breath. Lily didn't know why, but her steps slowed without her realizing it. Ranger suddenly stopped. His body stiffened, tail lowered, ears pointing toward the darker part of the woods where the sunlight didn't reach. Lily frowned, brushing loose strands of hair from her face. Ranger, what is it? She whispered, but the dog didn't look back. Instead, he took careful steps forward, nose pressed low to the ground. Lily followed his gaze, expecting maybe a squirrel or a deer. Instead, she saw something else: boot prints. Deep ones, fresh ones. They led off the path and into the thick of the forest, in a direction nobody normally went. Lily's curiosity tugged at her, but something about the way Ranger's muscles tightened made her chest flutter with unease. Still, she took a hesitant step after him, her heart thudding faster. Maybe someone got lost, she murmured, trying to reassure herself. Ranger glanced back at her and gave a low, uneasy whine, as if urging her to stay close. The forest around them grew quieter as they moved off the familiar trail. The crunch of leaves muffled under a blanket of tension she didn't fully understand. But she kept walking anyway, clutching the straps of her jacket, unable to shake the feeling that Ranger was leading her toward something important, something urgent, something she wasn't prepared for. And with every step deeper into the woods, that feeling only grew stronger. Ranger's posture changed before Lily even realized something was wrong. His head lifted, ears pinning forward as a deep rumble formed in his chest. Lily froze, her small fingers curling nervously around the edge of her coat. She had seen Ranger alert before when squirrels darted through bushes, or when deer leapt across the trail, but this was different. His body wasn't reacting with excitement. It was reacting with fear. Lily swallowed hard and whispered, Ranger, please don't scare me. But the dog didn't budge. Instead, he lowered his nose again, tracing the ground with slow, deliberate movements. The boot prints they had been following began to overlap with another set, lighter ones, dragging slightly as if the person had been stumbling. Lily's throat tightened as she followed the faint trail with her eyes. The forest felt heavier now, the silence almost ringing. Ranger took another step, then another, weaving through the tall trees with a cautious precision that made Lily's stomach twist. She kept up with him, clutching a small stick she had picked up earlier, not that it would help, but because holding something made her feel a little braver. Ahead, the woods grew darker, branches crowding together like a warning. A crackling sound floated through the air, distant but unmistakable. It wasn't the sound of footsteps or an animal. It was sharper, angrier, like burning. Ranger lifted his head suddenly, sniffing the air with frantic urgency. His growl deepened. Lily's heart hammered as she whispered, "You smell smoke." Ranger barked once, a sharp, urgent sound that made the leaves tremble around them. Without waiting, he bolted forward, not running wildly but moving with purpose, as if he knew something terrible was ahead. Lily hesitated only a moment before chasing after him, her boots pounding the forest floor. The crackling grew louder now, accompanied by a faint glow flickering between the trees. Lily felt her breath catch in her throat. Something was burning, and not by accident. Ranger pushed further into the thick brush, and Lily followed, unaware that every step was carrying them closer to a truth, far more horrifying than anything her imagination could have conjured. Ranger burst through the last line of brush, and Lily followed close behind, only to stumble to a stop as the world in front of her froze her breath. In a small clearing surrounded by towering trees stood a wooden post, rough and splintered. with thick ropes wrapped tightly around the body of a police officer. His head hung forward, his uniform torn and smeared with dirt and dry blood. But the most terrifying part wasn't the bruises on his face. It was the fire. Logs had been stacked beneath him, flames already climbing several inches high, licking dangerously at his boots. Lily let out a tiny gasp, her hands flying to her mouth. Ranger snarled, lowering himself into a protective stance as he stared at the flames with frantic intensity. For a moment, Lily couldn't move. The heat from the fire brushed her face, carrying the sickening smell of burning wood and smoldering fabric. She blinked rapidly, tears springing to her eyes not from the smoke but from the horror tightening inside her chest. The officer didn't appear conscious, but a faint groan escaped him as the flames crackled louder. Lily's heart jumped. "Ranger, we have to help him," she whispered, though her voice shook so hard she barely recognized it. Ranger stepped forward, circling the fire's edge, barking sharply as if trying to wake the man. The flames snapped back at him, glowing hotter with every passing second. Lily finally forced her legs to move. She crouched low, searching for a safe spot to get closer. The heat was strong enough to sting her skin, yet she pushed forward anyway, shielding her face with her sleeve. "Sir, can you hear me?" she called out, her voice trembling, but determined. The officer's head twitched, just barely, and a strained whisper escaped him, one that made Lily's blood turn cold. "Please, help." She glanced at Ranger, who growled deeply, as if urging her to act faster. Lily's fear twisted into something else, something stronger. She wiped her eyes, swallowed hard, and stepped closer to the flames, realizing that if she didn't do something now, this man would die right in front of her. Lily stumbled closer to the burning logs, her heart thundering so loudly she could barely hear the crackling flames. The heat forced her to squint, but she refused to back away. She grabbed the nearest stick she could find and began swatting at the fire, desperate to push the flames back even an inch. Sparks burst upward, stinging her hands, but she didn't stop. "Ranger, help!" she cried, her voice shaking. The German Shepherd barked sharply and began scraping dirt toward the flames with his paws, trying to smother them. For a brief moment, the fire dimmed, giving Lily room to inch closer. She reached up and tugged at the ropes binding the officer, but they were thick and pulled tight, far too tight for her small hands to loosen. The officer groaned again, his eyelids fluttering weakly. "Stop, it's too dangerous," he whispered, but Lily shook her head fiercely. "I'm not leaving you," she insisted, pulling harder even though her fingers were burning from the heat. Sweat slipped down her temples as she fought with the ropes, her breath coming in quick. Frightened burst. Ranger barked again 3 sharp warnings before pushing his body between Lily and the flames, shielding her from a sudden flare. Lily covered her face as the fire hissed upward, but she didn't run. She couldn't. She felt a lump rise in her throat when she looked up and saw the officer's face twist in pain. Then, only inches from her ear, she heard distant voices echoing through the trees. Deep voices. Male voices. Lily's entire body went still. Ranger perked up, his growl low and vibrating through the ground. The officer's eyes opened wider, panic flickering inside them. "They're coming back," he rasped. Lily's breath caught. The ropes, the fire, the clearing, it wasn't an accident. Someone had done this on purpose. Ranger nudged her urgently, pushing her backward. Lily staggered, torn between fear and determination. She knew she couldn't free him alone, not now. Not with the fire growing and the men returning. But she also knew one thing with absolute certainty: she couldn't abandon him. Not now. Not ever. Lily's heart jumped into her throat as the distant voices grew louder, carrying through the trees like a warning she wasn't ready to face. Ranger pressed against her leg, his body rigid, ears pointed sharply toward the sound. She grabbed a fistful of his fur and pulled him with her, stumbling toward a fallen log nearby. The voices became clear, deep, rough, and getting closer with every second. Lily crouched behind the log, pressing herself as small as she could, her breath trembling in her chest. Ranger huddled beside her, his growl barely contained as he kept his eyes fixed on the clearing. Lily clapped a hand gently over his muzzle, whispering, "Please, please stay quiet." The dog obeyed, but the tension in his body vibrated against her arm. Through the gaps between branches, Lily saw movement: 3 men stepping into the clearing. They wore dark clothes, heavy boots, and masks that hid most of their faces. One of them kicked a log further beneath the officer, sending sparks flying. "He should have burned by now," the man muttered angrily. Another laughed coldly. "Doesn't matter. He won't survive another hour." Lily felt her stomach twist painfully. They wanted him to die. On purpose. The tallest man circled the officer with slow, calculated steps. "He shouldn't have been snooping around our barrels," he said. "Now the whole town will learn to mind their own business." Lily felt Ranger shift beside her, every muscle coiled like a spring. She held him tightly, terrified he might leap out and attack. "Not yet," she breathed. "Please, not yet." The men continued talking, their voices dripping with confidence, unaware of the small girl hidden just a few yards away. "Once we blow the plant," one said, "there won't be water for weeks. They'll blame electrical failure. Not us." Lily's eyes widened. Blow the plant? Destroy the town's water? This wasn't just about the officer, they were planning something huge. Something terrible. She pressed a trembling hand against her mouth, forcing herself not to cry. The men eventually stepped away from the fire, fading into another part of the woods. Lily watched them disappear, her fear turning into something sharper determination. Lily stayed crouched behind the fallen log, her breath trembling as the men's footsteps faded into the deeper part of the forest. But just as she thought they were gone, their voices drifted back, quieter now, but clear enough for every word to slice through the cold air. Ranger lifted his head slightly, ears tracking the sound with razor focus. Lily leaned forward in silence, her heart pounding. "We hit the water facility at sundown," one man said, his voice rough and confident. "No alarms, no suspicion, just one massive blast." Another chuckled. "By the time anyone figures it out, we'll be long gone." Lily's hands tightened over Ranger's fur. She understood enough to know this wasn't just mischief. This was destruction, and her town was the target. The tallest man spoke next, his tone colder than the others. "The officer knew too much. He saw us unloading the barrels last night. That's why he followed us." Lily peered through the branches, watching him gesture toward the injured officer tied to the post. "We couldn't risk him running back to the sheriff. So, we took care of it. Took care of it." The words echoed in Lily's ears like a terrible riddle she wished she didn't understand. Ranger's growl vibrated softly against her arm, and she quickly hushed him again, her tiny fingers trembling. If they were planning something this big, she couldn't let them know she'd overheard. She couldn't let them find her. Not until she figured out what to do. The men began walking deeper, continuing their conversation. "Once the plant goes, chaos follows. No water, no power. People will panic within hours," another answered with a laugh. "Exactly. And while they're scrambling, we collect what we came for." Lily felt her blood run cold. She didn't know what they wanted, but she knew one thing: they were willing to burn an officer alive to protect their plan. When their voices finally disappeared, swallowed by the trees, Lily pressed her forehead to Ranger's back, trying to steady her shaking breaths. She wasn't strong. She wasn't brave. But she had heard enough to know one thing: if she didn't act now, her entire town was in danger. Lily pressed her back against the fallen log, trying to steady the wild rhythm of her heartbeat. Ranger nudged her shoulder gently, sensing her fear. But his steady presence was the only thing keeping her from breaking down. She peeked over the log again, making sure the men were truly gone. The clearing was silent now, except for the crackling flames licking dangerously close to the officer's legs. Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her sleeve. She wanted to run to him, to drag him away, to somehow put out the fire, but the men's words echoed relentlessly in her mind. "They're coming back, sundown. One massive blast. If she spent too long here, she'd be trapped when they returned." Her chest tightened painfully as she looked at the officer, weak, bound, and fading fast. He needed her, but so did the town. Ranger rested his chin on her knee, waiting. Lily bit her lip until she tasted blood. She was only 8 years old. She wasn't a firefighter or a police officer or a hero. She was just Lily. But she couldn't pretend she hadn't heard their plan. And she couldn't let an entire town be destroyed. Somehow, she had to get help. And she had to do it fast. Lily knelt beside Ranger and whispered, "You have to stay with him." Ranger's ears twitched, unsure. She placed both hands on his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Please, don't let anyone hurt him again." Ranger gave a soft, determined whine, then positioned himself between the fire and the officer like a guardian ready to defend with his life. Lily swallowed hard. Leaving them alone felt like the most terrifying choice she had ever made. But staying was even worse. She took one last look at the officer, memorizing the desperation in his half-open eyes. Then, gathering every ounce of courage she didn't know she had, Lily turned and began running. Branches slapped her arms, roots threatened to trip her, but she didn't stop. She ran harder and faster than she had ever run in her life because every second mattered, and the fate of the entire town now rested on her shoulders. Lily sprinted through the forest, each breath sharp and burning as cold air stabbed her lungs. Branches whipped against her arms, but she didn't slow, not even for a second. Every heartbeat echoed the same desperate thought: get help, get help, get help. Behind her, somewhere far beyond the trees, Ranger was staying with the officer, guarding him from the fire and from the men who could return at any moment. Lily forced herself not to look back. If she did, she knew her legs would stop moving. She leaped over a fallen branch, stumbled, caught her balance, and kept running. The forest that once felt familiar now seemed endless, stretching into a maze of shadows and tangled roots. A sudden crack of branches snapped behind her. Lily froze mid-step, chest heaving. For a terrifying second, she thought one of the masked men had followed her. She ducked behind a thick tree trunk, pressing her shaking hands against the bark. The footsteps grew louder, fast, heavy, purposeful. Lily covered her mouth, fighting the urge to sob. But then, from the darkness, a deer burst through the brush, bolting past her in a blur of brown fur and startled eyes. Lily nearly collapsed from relief. She waited until the forest went silent again before pushing forward, her legs trembling beneath her. The deeper she went, the harder it became to see. The fading afternoon light barely pierced through the dense canopy overhead. Lily stumbled more than once, catching herself just before hitting the ground. She felt her strength slipping, panic clawing at her ribs, but she forced herself to keep going. "Please, someone be close," she whispered, voice cracking. She didn't know how far she'd traveled, only that every step brought her closer to help hand, closer to saving Ranger and the officer. Then, through the trees, she spotted it, the wooden ranger cabin, faintly lit from the inside, standing like a miracle at the edge of the trail. Lily choked on a breath of relief and ran toward it with everything she had left, hoping, praying that someone inside would believe her. Lily burst through the door of the ranger cabin so fast that the wind slammed it against the wall. Officer Harris, who had been pouring coffee at the small counter, nearly dropped the mug. "Ho, slow down," he said, eyes widening at the sight of the panting, dirt-smeared child in front of him. Lily couldn't breathe enough to form words. She clutched her chest, gasping, "Help, please. There's a man eyed up, Fire Ranger, bad men, please." Harris set down his mug quickly, but confusion crossed his face. "Easy, kiddo. Slow down. What happened?" Lily shook her head wildly, words tumbling out in broken pieces. "A police officer, he's hurt, he's gonna die." Her voice cracked, tears streaking down her cheeks. Two other rangers stepped from the back room, drawn by the commotion. One knelt beside her, offering a blanket she didn't take. "Sweetheart, are you sure?" he asked gently. "There haven't been any officers reported missing." Lily stomped her foot in frustration. "I'm telling the truth. He's tied to a pole. There's fire everywhere." Harris exchanged a doubtful look with the others. Children got scared in the woods all the time. They saw shadows, imagined things, misinterpreted fallen branches or lost campers. "Maybe you saw a scarecrow from the old burn pile," one suggested quietly. Lily clenched her fists. "It wasn't a scarecrow, he talked. He said they're coming back." Harris crouched down so he was eye level with her. "Who's coming back?" Lily hesitated, the fear rising again. "The men. The men with masks. They want to blow up the town's water place. Something about barrels." Harris's face tightened slightly, an expression somewhere between concern and disbelief. "That's a pretty big story," he said carefully. "Are you sure you didn't imagine?" The cabin door slammed again. Ranger burst inside. Covered in ash, his hackles were raised, his breathing frantic, and a faint scorch mark brushed one side of his fur. He ran straight to Lily, circling her protectively before barking at Harris with desperate urgency. All doubt vanished from the room. Harris's eyes widened. "Get your gear," he ordered the others. "Now." The cabin snapped into motion, the second ranger barked. Officer Harris didn't waste another breath. He grabbed the radio from his belt and barked into it. "Possible officer down in Sector 4. Mobilize all available units." Static crackled, followed by multiple confirmations. Lily stood trembling as the room transformed into a whirlwind of movement, boots thudding, radios buzzing, vests snapping, weapons checked, flashlights strapped to belts. Ranger stayed planted beside her, his tail stiff, gaze locked on the door like he was ready to lead them himself. Harris turned to Lily, his voice firm but not unkind. "You're going to show us where. Stay close. Don't run off again." Lily nodded quickly. "I won't. I remember the way." Within minutes, a convoy of officers and rangers gathered outside, engines rumbling beneath the darkening sky. The sun was sliding low, the woods sinking into deeper shadows. Harris opened the passenger door of his truck and nodded at Lily. "Hop in. You're guiding." Lily climbed up, pulling Ranger beside her. As the convoy rolled toward the trailhead, Harris adjusted the radio. "Keep your eyes open," he warned his team. "If this kid is right, we're walking into something planned." The trees rushed past them in a blur of greens and grays, each second sharpening the urgency inside Lily's chest. She clung to the seat, replaying the men's voices in her mind. Sundown. One massive blast. Barrels. They reached the edge of the forest, where the vehicles could go no farther. Flashlights clicked on. Guns were drawn. The team fell into formation. Harris crouched beside Lily. "Lead us," he said. She nodded, swallowing her fear, and pointed into the thickening darkness. "It's this way. I promise." Ranger took the first step into the woods. Lily followed directly behind him. Officers fanned out around them, boots crunching leaves. Light slicing through the trees like white blades. Every sound, every rustle, every snap felt amplified in the narrowing trail. Harris whispered to Lily, "If you remember anything else, tell me immediately," as the forest swallowed them whole. Lily's heart pounded. They were getting close, and time was running out. The deeper they went, the stronger Lily's fear grew. The forest felt different now, alive, listening, almost warning them to turn back. Ranger's ears twitched constantly, his steps becoming sharper, quicker, more urgent. Suddenly, he stopped. A low growl vibrated through his chest. Harris signaled the team to halt, raising a clenched fist. Everyone froze in silence. Lily listened, heart hammering, and then she heard it too. Voices, angry ones, coming from the clearing up ahead. Harris leaned down. "Is that them?" he whispered. Lily nodded, barely breathing. Yes. The officers exchanged tense glances and moved into formation. Harris motioned Lily behind a large oak tree. "Stay here. Do not move unless Ranger tells you." In the clearing, chaos had begun. The masked men had returned and they were furious. One of them kicked over a burnt log, shouting, "Where is he? I swear he was tied right here." Another scanned the ground with a flashlight. Someone dragged him. Their panic grew with every second, their whispers turning into frantic arguments. The tallest man barked, spread out. He couldn't have gotten far. As they split into groups, Ranger growled again, stronger this time. Harris nodded to two officers. "Flank left. Quiet." The team moved like shadows, their weapons raised, their boots sinking silently into the forest floor. But one of the masked men noticed something, a footprint. Tiny, fresh. "Someone else is here," he snarled. "A kid." Lily clutched the bark beside her so hard her fingers stung. Ranger stepped in front of her, shielding her with his body. Before the man could move closer, a voice boomed from the darkness. "Police, drop your weapons." Flashlights exploded across the clearing, blinding the criminals. Panic erupted. The men drew weapons, firing wildly toward the trees. Officers returned fire, ducking behind stumps and boulders. The forest lit up with flashes, shouts, and the sharp crack of gunshots. One by one, the masked men scrambled for cover, their confidence cracking under the sudden assault. Lily covered her ears, trembling as the battle raged just yards away, and somewhere in that chaos, the injured officer still needed saving. Gunfire crackled through the forest like exploding branches. Lily flinched at every shot, her small body trembling behind the oak tree. But Ranger didn't hide. He stood low and ready, muscles taut, eyes fixed on the clearing. He glanced back at Lily, letting out a sharp bark, one she recognized instantly. It wasn't fear. It was a command. "Now." Lily swallowed hard, gripping the tree for balance as she peeked around the trunk. In the flicker of gunfire, she spotted him, Officer Cole, lying half slumped against the post. The fire beneath him had burned low, but the rope still held him captive, and stray bullets were hitting the ground dangerously close to him. Lily's breath hitched. If she didn't move now, he wouldn't survive the next minute. Ranger nudged her leg, urging her forward. Lily nodded, wiping her face with shaking hands. "Okay? Okay," she whispered, though it felt like her voice belonged to someone braver. She waited for a brief pause and the gunfire, one heartbeat of quiet, and then she darted into the clearing. Her feet slapped the dirt, her lungs burning, her legs moving faster than fear could stop them. Harris spotted her instantly. "Lily, nitrogen monoxide, get back," he yelled, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Ranger sprinted beside her, weaving between flashes of gunfire, barking furiously to draw attention away from her. Lily reached the post and dropped to her knees beside Officer Cole. "I'm here. I'm here," she whispered, her fingers clawing at the ropes. Cole's eyes fluttered open. "Kid, get out. Too dangerous," he rasped. Lily shook her head fiercely, tugging at a knot until her fingers burned. "I'm not leaving you." Ranger circled them, teeth bared, deflecting anyone who came near. A bullet struck the dirt inches from Lily's foot, showering her with soil. She gasped but kept pulling. Finally, one rope snapped, then another. With one final desperate tug, the last rope gave way. Cole collapsed forward and Lily caught him. "Ranger, help," she cried. The dog gripped the officer's sleeve and dragged him as Lily pushed from behind. All three scrambling away from the firestorm behind them. They weren't safe yet, but they were alive. The gunfire began to die down as officers pushed the masked men deeper into the forest. their formation tightening like a net closing around trapped wolves. But not all of them were caught, not yet. Lily, breathless and shaking, helped guide Officer Cole behind a fallen tree while Ranger stood guard, chest heaving, teeth bared. In the dim flicker of flashlights and smoke, Lily spotted movement to the right, quick, purposeful, and heading away from the fight. A tall figure slipped between the trees, clutching a black duffel bag filled with something heavy. Lily recognized him instantly. The leader. The man who had ordered the officer to burn. The one who had planned to blow up the town's water plant. And he was escaping. Ranger noticed him too. His growl deepened, vibrating through the soil beneath Lily's feet. She grabbed his collar instinctively. Ranger, no, she whispered. But Ranger wasn't asking for permission. He was waiting for command. Lily looked toward Harris, who was still pinned behind a tree, exchanging fire with the last resisting criminal. He couldn't chase the leader. No one could, not fast enough. Lily's eyes darted back to Ranger. Her breath trembled. Go, she whispered. Ranger launched forward like a bullet. The leader sprinted harder, crashing through the undergrowth, branches snapping beneath his boots. He glanced behind him and cursed. Stupid dog, get back, he shouted, pulling a knife from his belt. Ranger didn't slow. He closed the distance in seconds, leaping with a deep, furious bark. The leader swung the blade wildly, but Ranger dodged and latched onto his arm, dragging him down with astonishing force. The man hit the ground hard, the duffel bag spilling open, revealing wires, explosive gel, and timers. Ranger held the man pinned, snarling, until officers arrived. Harris rushed in, cuffing the leader with a hard shove. You're done, he snapped. The man glared at Ranger, spitting dirt. This isn't over, he hissed. But Lily stepped forward, voice shaking yet firm. Yes, it is. Ranger stood proudly at her side, tail still bristling. For the first time all night, Lily felt hoped out. By morning, the forest was crawling with investigators. Bright floodlights lit the clearing where Officer Cole had been tied. Now surrounded by yellow tape and busy hands collecting evidence, Lily stood beside Ranger at the edge of the scene, wrapped in a blanket far too big for her small frame. Exhaustion weighed heavy on her, but she refused to leave until she knew everything was truly over. Officer Harris rested a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You did good, kid, he said softly. Better than most adults would have. Lily didn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the officers carrying out the duffel bag full of explosives, their faces tight with disbelief. Ranger leaned against her leg, sensing her worried. By midday, the town hall filled faster than anyone expected. Word had spread like wildfire: an officer rescued from being burned alive, a criminal group caught in the woods, and a child at the center of it all. The mayor stepped onto the stage, flanked by police officers, including a bandaged but conscious Officer Cole. The room went silent. Last night, the mayor began, voice solemn, our town came within inches of catastrophe. He held up a photo of the explosives. Gasps rippled through the crowd. These were planned to destroy our water facility. If the plan had succeeded, thousands of families would have been left without clean water. Hospitals, schools, homes, it would have crippled us. Lily stood quietly beside Ranger as the mayor continued. But that didn't happen. Because one little girl and her dog were brave enough to act. The crowd turned toward her. Murmurs grew into applause, starting slow before rising into a thunderous wave. Lily's cheeks warmed, and she looked down, embarrassed. Ranger barked happily, tail thumping against her leg. Officer Cole stepped forward, leaning lightly on a cane. She saved my life, he said, and she saved all of yours too. The room erupted again, cheers, claps, and grateful tears from people who realized how close they'd come to disaster. Lily squeezed Ranger's collar, whispering, we did it. And for the first time since the forest, she allowed herself to finally breathe. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors and the gentle hum of evening air drifting through the slightly open window. Lily sat in a chair beside the bed, her legs swinging above the floor as Ranger lay curled protectively at her feet. Officer Cole, wrapped in bandages but much stronger than before, watched her with grateful eyes. You shouldn't be here worrying about me, he said softly. Kids your age should be outside playing. Lily shrugged, tracing a finger along Ranger's back. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. Cole smiled, a warm, slow smile that reached all the way to his tired eyes. I'm alive because of you. That's more than okay. He reached into the drawer beside him and pulled out a small box. Lily blinked in surprise as he opened it, revealing a silver medallion shaped like a shield, engraved with the words honor and courage. This is for Ranger, Cole said. He fought harder than any trained officer out there. Ranger perked up, tilting his head proudly as Lily fastened the medal onto his collar, giggling through the tears she didn't realize were falling. He deserves it, she whispered. Cole nodded, So, do you? The door opened, and Officer Harris stepped inside with a gentle smile. Time to head home, Lily, he said. Your parents are waiting. Lily stood, but hesitated, glancing at Cole. He lifted a hand. Come here. She stepped closer, and Cole rested his palm lightly on her shoulder. You didn't just save me, he said. You saved this entire town? Don't ever forget that. Lily swallowed hard, nodding with quiet pride. Ranger nudged Cole's hand before trotting back to Lily's side. As Harris walked them down the hallway, Lily looked back at Cole one last time. He waved, eyes shining. Outside the hospital doors, the evening sky glowed pink and gold. Lily took a deep breath, feeling lighter than she had in days. Ranger pressed against her leg, tail swaying gently. Heroes didn't always wear badges, sometimes. They were just little girls brave enough to run toward the fire instead of away from it.